me say, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Marjorie's fine. I don't know what y'all doing, but find something else to do. Cause we fine.
Y'all, is it me or is Steve Harvey doing damage control after all those cheating allegations? Well, Steve Harvey has finally broken his silence on rumors that Marjorie cheated on him. And while he claims his marriage is as strong as ever, honestly, I and several others are not convinced. So, in case you missed it, reports recently appeared on social media that Marjorie cheated on Steve with his bodyguard and his personal chef.
Some days I'd be willing to trade my man for a really good what?
Pool boy.
A good what?
I'm sorry.
What did you just say?
And while Steve is now denying these rumors, knowing Marjorie's history, it really wouldn't be that shocking if she really did cheat on him. Also, we all know Steve worships the ground Marjorie walks on. And I don't know about y'all, but I can totally see Steve forgiving Marjorie if she actually cheated. But is there any proof Marjorie had affairs with Steve's employees? And is Steve pulling a Wendy Williams and too embarrassed to admit he got played? Let's get into it.
Sometimes you just wanna respond, but I ain't got no time for rumor and gossip, man. God been good to me.
So, several outlets recently reported that Steve's wife Marjorie got caught cheating with Steve's bodyguard and his personal chef. Meanwhile, other sources also claimed that Marjorie is already planning to file for divorce and take half of Steve's fortune.
Right now, rumors are swirling, trending on Twitter, that Marjorie cheated on Steve with his bodyguard. And not only does she want a divorce, but she also wants $200 million.
So if these rumors are true, I can't say I'm happy that Steve got cheated on, because no one deserves that. But since Steve has been dishing out marriage advice for years and constantly bragging about how perfect Marjorie is, let's just say I can't help but soak up the irony. But am I surprised Marjorie would do something like this? Not at all, because if there's one thing that people should know about Marjorie Harvey, it's that she's been a player her whole life. Before Marjorie rebranded herself as Steve Harvey's glamorous wife, she was busy hustling in these streets, dating drug lords, and trying to stay out of jail. I know it's hard to imagine that Marjorie lived like that before she met Steve, but facts don't lie. Okay, to give you some context, Marjorie first met Steve in 1990 at a comedy club in Memphis, and Steve apparently knew right away that Marjorie was the one.
So I came late, came down front with my girlfriend. Our seats were right here at the front, right by the stage. So we were sitting here, the stage was here. So he's just quiet. He just keeps staring at me. So I'm waiting on him to make me a part of the show so we can get on with the show. So he stayed quiet so long, staring at me. Now everybody in the club is looking at me. And so he finally realized, okay, I gotta say something. He was like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know who this is, but I'm gonna marry her.
Marjorie, however, needed something more from Steve than just words. And though they dated for a short while, Marjorie reportedly dumped Steve because he was taking a little too long to get his money right. However, Steve and Marjorie reconnected in 2005. And by this time, Steve had secured the bag. And Marjorie suddenly realized he deserved another chance. But see, Marjorie wasn't wasting any time while Steve was busy building his career. And between breaking up with Steve for the first time until their reunion in 2005, Marjorie got married and divorced twice to two drug lords. She first got married to Jim Townsend, and during the 1990s, both Jim and Marjorie came under investigation from the FBI and DEA due to their suspected connections to illegal drug operations, with Marjorie reportedly gaining the nickname Lady Heroin. What in the Harlem Nights? And according to one report, investigators informed Jim that unless he cooperated with them, Marjorie would face arrest because they had evidence of her own illegal activities. And though Jim apparently cooperated with authorities to protect Marjorie, he got the short end of the stick and was sentenced to life in prison. He ended up serving 26 years before President Obama pardoned him in 2017. Meanwhile, Marjorie had already moved on, and after filing for divorce from Jim while he was still in prison, she married Darnell Woods, Jim's distant cousin, who was also a drug dealer. Marjorie and Darnell had one child together, Lori, and while not much is known about Darnell, some reports claim he's still in prison. It's also not clear when exactly Marjorie and Darnell separated, but we do know that she reconnected with Steve in 2005, and since Steve was already an established name at that point, she decided he was a much better match for her than Darnell. Steve and Marjorie tied the knot in 2007, and Steve adopted adopted Marjorie's 3 children from her previous 2 marriages. And Steve also had baggage of his own, and before reconnecting with Marjorie, he had also married and divorced twice and fathered 4 children. From his first marriage to Marcia Harvey, Steve has twin daughters, Brandy and Carly, and 1 son, Broderick Harvey Jr. And according to Marcia, Steve left her and their 2 daughters while she was pregnant with Broderick. Marcia also reportedly suspected that Steve had cheated on her with his next wife, Mary Shackelford, and Mary later ended up accusing Steve of cheating on her with Marjorie. Steve and Mary got married in 1996 and had 1 son, Winton. They divorced in 2005, shortly after Steve reconnected with Marjorie, and Mary later alleged that Marjorie convinced Steve to cut all ties with her and take away Winton. Mary also claimed that Steve was unfaithful, and she said it was disturbing how quickly Steve dropped her for Marjorie.
When I think about how quickly he moved forward from me to Marjorie, that was disturbing.
And what's even more disturbing is that Mary claimed Steve took Winton and turned him against her, and she also alleged that Steve, apparently on Marjorie's advice, used his money and influence to manipulate the courts and basically left her on the street, broke and homeless.
He took my Winton. Took my Winton from me. He turned my son against me. Had me evicted from our house. Thrown out.
Mary recently criticized Marjorie for manipulating the situation and turning Winton against her, which led fans to accuse Marjorie of being evil.
I know that as a mother, if I was ever in a position to where I had to be in charge of somebody else's child, I definitely make sure they have a great relationship with that child. But I just don't see how Marjorie, in particular, can call herself a mother to her own children and deliberately try to sabotage my relationship with my son.
Marjorie also allegedly convinced Steve to pay the tabloids to portray Mary as crazy. So in case Mary started speaking out against her and Steve, nobody would believe her. And that's exactly what Steve did. And he started accusing Mary of being vindictive and using Winton to get back at him.
See, I know the truth.
God in your mix.
I know the truth, but the matter is, the part that's hurtful in here is my wife and children have to be drugged into this. You know, if you're going to be vindictive, then go ahead and just aim it at me. But my son is coming in the room crying. And that's also her son. So why you would do this?
But despite Steve trying to play the victim, the public mostly sided with Mary due to Steve and Marjorie's shady history of cheating and manipulation. And by this time, fans had already started telling Steve that sooner or later, karma would catch up with him, and many of them predicted that Marjorie would end up beating him at his own game. See, after he married Marjorie, Steve started giving out unsolicited relationship and marriage advice, despite his 2 failed marriages and multiple cheating allegations. In 2009, Steve published Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, a self-help book that targets single women and gives them advice on how to get a man to commit. And the book is rooted in Steve's belief that men are very simple creatures, primarily motivated by their financial status and easily manipulated by women who know how to think like they do. In the book, Steve presents marriage as the solution to all problems that women face, both single women and those with boyfriends. And he claims that insisting on setting a wedding date early on is the only way to get a man to stick around. But it looks like Steve forgot to write a chapter on how to get a woman to stick around. Because if these recent reports about Marjorie cheating are true, then this is beyond embarrassing for Steve's life and soul. And this might be the reason Steve now appears to be doing damage control and trying hard to squash the rumors about Marjorie's affairs. While speaking at a recent business event in Atlanta, Steve addressed the viral reports that Marjorie had multiple affairs, and he claimed that he and Marjorie are fine, and also blasted fans for spreading gossip about his marriage.
One thing about me coming here, I've always loved black people. I've always loved my people. Y'all belong to me and I belong to y'all. Good and bad. Before I get started, just let me say, I'm fine. Marjorie fine. I don't know what y'all doing, but find something else to do, because we fine. Okay. Lord have mercy.
But Steve choosing to address these rumors like this got fans talking even more, and many of them are saying Steve sounds like he's trying a little too hard to convince himself that his marriage is fine. One fan said, he's hurt and embarrassed. I believe what he said on stage was done to make him look strong in front of people. I agree it's nobody's business what's going on in his life though, but he seems to love that woman more than she loves him, and to have a friend you've employed for years to do what he did with his wife had to sting. Money could pay the bills, but it still can't stop a heart from being broken and needing time to heal. And another fan added, he's gonna say whatever because he knows that his money got that woman and not him as a person. He knew what he paid for. But how do y'all feel about this? Do you think Steve is telling the truth about his marriage being fine, or is he lying to himself and us? Let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure to click on this next video for more celeb tea.